An American Tragedy. Clyde Griffiths was born into a poor and religious family in Kansas City, where his parents led a life of street preaching and modest income. From an early age, Clyde felt a deep sense of shame and dissatisfaction with his family's poverty and their lack of social status. He longed for a life of luxury, wealth, and respectability, far removed from the humble and pious existence his parents embraced. As a teenager, Clyde started working as a bellboy at a local hotel, where he was exposed to a world of wealth and indulgence that he had never known. The luxurious surroundings and the carefree lifestyle of the wealthy guests fueled Clyde's desire to escape his own circumstances. He became increasingly determined to climb the social ladder, even if it meant compromising his morals. Clyde's ambitions led him down a path of dangerous choices, as he began to distance himself from his family's values and sought out opportunities to elevate his social standing. Clyde's life took a significant turn when he moved to Lycurgus, New York, to work at his wealthy uncle's collar factory. It was here that he saw a real chance to improve his station in life. He worked hard and soon caught the eye of his supervisors, which led to a promotion and increased responsibilities. With his new status, Clyde began to mingle with the upper class of Lycurgus, attending parties and social events where he was introduced to a life of comfort and luxury that he had always dreamed of. At one such event, Clyde met Sandra Finchley, the beautiful and wealthy daughter of a prominent Lycurgus family. Sandra represented everything Clyde desired: wealth, beauty, and social standing. He was captivated by her charm and elegance, and the two began a flirtation that quickly grew into a passionate romance. Sandra, in turn, was attracted to Clyde's mysterious background and his ambitions, and she encouraged him to aspire to greater heights. However, Clyde was already involved with another woman, Roberta Alden, a working-class girl he had met at the factory. Roberta was deeply in love with Clyde, and their relationship had become intimate. But as Clyde's relationship with Sandra deepened, he began to see Roberta as an obstacle to his social ambitions. Torn between his love for Roberta and his desire for wealth and status through Sandra, Clyde's life grew increasingly complicated. As Clyde's relationship with Sandra flourished, Roberta discovered that she was pregnant. The news devastated Clyde, as it threatened to ruin all of his plans for a future with Sandra and the upper-class life he so desperately craved. Roberta, realizing the seriousness of her situation, pressured Clyde to marry her. Trapped between two lives, Clyde became desperate. In his panic, Clyde considered the unthinkable, eliminating Roberta to remove the obstacle she posed to his ambitions. He concocted a plan to take her on a boat trip, during which he intended to stage an accident that would result in her death. The thought of murdering Roberta filled Clyde with dread and guilt, but his desire to be with Sandra and secure a place in high society overwhelmed his conscience. On the day of the trip, Clyde hesitated, torn between his conscience and his ambitions. As they rowed across the lake, Roberta, sensing something was wrong, began to plead with Clyde. In a moment of panic, Clyde accidentally hit Roberta with the camera he was carrying, causing her to fall into the water. Instead of helping her, Clyde watched in horror as she drowned, unable to bring himself to save her. After Roberta's death, Clyde tried to carry on with his life as though nothing had happened. He returned to Lycurgus and resumed his courtship of Sandra, who remained unaware of his involvement in Roberta's death. However, Clyde was haunted by guilt and fear, constantly looking over his shoulder, dreading that his crime would be discovered. His fears were soon realized when Roberta's body was found and the authorities began an investigation. Evidence quickly pointed to Clyde as the prime suspect, and he was arrested and charged with murder. The trial that followed became a sensational case, with the media portraying Clyde as a cold-blooded killer driven by greed and ambition. Despite his lawyers' efforts to portray him as a victim of circumstance, the evidence against Clyde was overwhelming. As the trial progressed, Clyde's hopes of escaping punishment dwindled. The testimony of witnesses, the forensic evidence, and Clyde's own contradictory statements painted a damning picture. The jury found Clyde guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to death. As Clyde awaited his execution, he reflected on the choices that had led him to this point. He thought about his upbringing, his ambitions, and the people he had hurt in his pursuit of a better life. In his final days, Clyde was visited by his mother, who had never abandoned him despite his crimes. She prayed for his soul and urged him to seek forgiveness, but Clyde struggled to find peace. In his last hours, Clyde wrote letters to his family, expressing his remorse and regret for the pain he had caused. He also wrote to Sandra, though he knew she would likely never forgive him. As the day of his execution arrived, Clyde faced his fate with a mixture of fear and resignation. The life he had once dreamed of had ended in tragedy, and he could only hope that his story would serve as a cautionary tale for others who might be tempted by the same desires. On the day of his execution, Clyde was led to the electric chair. He offered no resistance, accepting his fate with the realization that his pursuit of wealth and status had ultimately led to his downfall. As the switch was pulled, Clyde's life came to an end, and with it, the tragic story of a man whose dreams of greatness were consumed by his own ambition.